I want Nicobar to be the place where people come to do their greatest work. I don't want to be the place where people have done their greatest work and come to Nicobar. And in a country of color, we launched with black and white as our first collection. There's a real simplicity that Indians are craving. I'm not a big fan of everyone just thumping India's the greatest. At Nicobar, we're creating a modern Indian way of living, dressing, and looking at the world. So that became our touchstone. And I just said, when I left India in 1987, India was all about cricket, Bollywood, Rajasthani colors.
How you look at businesses in general, also because of your previous background, and perhaps what your learnings on capital allocation have been.
That's a very broad question, but generally I grew up very middle class. So to me, crores was an insane amount of money.
Nicobar products are great design, you've had great designers, you continue obsessing over design. How do you make it happen?
We just got lucky because...
Hello. Before we get started with this episode, I quickly wanted to share that we're now a part of the Zerodha Media Network. Thank you so much for watching.
Welcome to the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host Jivraj, and today I have with me an extremely special guest who's built a very unique India-first, design-first brand that I'm sure all of you know about. Join me in welcoming Raul Rai, who's the co-founder of Nicobar. Thank you so much, Raul, for joining me today. Very delighted to be hosting you.
Excited to be here, Jivraj.
No, I think I've been waiting for this for a really long time. And the reason I'm excited is because Nicobar has this distinct personality, which outside in feels very difficult for new age brands to pull off, which is be design first, be India first, stand for something global, stand for something that is aspirational, luxury, retail first, all of which is, by the way, almost opposite of what startup wisdom is, which is start online, go mass premium, luxury is difficult, so go maybe one layer down, retail is difficult to pull off, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So I want to understand all of how you built the brand, but where I want to start is by understanding what Nicobar stands for in your articulation. Because before the episode, I actually asked a bunch of the followers on the pod, right? Like, what does Nicobar stand for them? Right. And I actually got interesting articulation. One of the best was, it's not Desi, it's not Western, it's just modern Indian.
Yeah.
I really love that.
Yeah.
Everybody talked about the quality, about the aspiration. But talk to us about what your definition for Nicobar is, and then we'll go deeper into what does it mean.
Yeah, I'll answer that first. First of all, I love the fact that this guy said we're not Desi, we're not this, we're modern Indian. Because if that's exactly what we are. I feel some of the best brands in the world actually come out of the founder's life story. And so if you look at my story, it's about being 18 years in India in the beginning, and then going to the US and Europe for about 18 years. And I would say, half in jest, but when I left India in 1987, I wanted to be American. I thought
because that was the aspiration.
That was the aspiration. I thought the coolest stuff happened in America. Most of the viewers will not know, but there were shows like The A-Team. There was, Rocky. I was like, wow, this is crazy stuff, man. So I leave in 1987 wanting to be American. And America was amazing for me. Why was it amazing? Because I worked in college as a security guard. I worked as a bicycle courier. I worked as a waiter. And there was pride in it. There was, I can't imagine myself working as a security guard over here. But it gave me that opportunity, which today means I look at the security guard in my Nicobar store differently. I look at the guy in the warehouse differently. So in 1987, I go off to America. I wanted to be American. But as I spent time there, and I was there for about 18 years, I suddenly saw, because of the distance, amazing things in India's history, culture, including the role of, I would say, silence, spirituality, a mindful way of living, and then our history, culture. It's just a treasure trove of stories. And then I just had this yearning to be back in India. So I leave wanting to be American, and then I come back wanting to rediscover my Indianness.
And this is 2005.
In 2005, yeah.
Okay.
And then I get very lucky because I meet my wife, Simran, whose mother started Good Earth and whose brother runs Royal Enfield. So suddenly I get thrust into a family who, in my view, are building incredible brands from India. And so it was just the pieces of the puzzle fitting together. And, uh, and really, therefore, I came up with this very corny line, which we'll never use externally, but which became the seed of what we're trying to do, which is inspire India to modernize without necessarily westernizing. And and I said that history used to be all about the East, then it became all about the West, but I felt that the next 500 years is how it all comes together, the East and the West. And so I'm not a big fan of everyone just thumping India as the greatest, nor am I a big fan of America as the greatest, but I think there's amazing things happening in America, in the Far East, in Middle East. And how does this all come together? And so that corny line, inspiring India to modernize without necessarily westernizing, has been translated to at Nicobar, we're creating a modern Indian way of living, dressing, and looking at the world. So that became our touchstone. It became our core purpose, which is why this person who mentions modern India, it's exactly what we stand for. And I just said, when I left India in 1987, India was all about cricket, Bollywood, Rajasthani colors. And if you look at what happened last week, chess grandmaster, chess victory. So what's more important at Nicobar then is to post, and we had a beautiful post called Checkmate History. But that's what we stand for. We just want to be a small part of a large ecosystem that is championing a new way of what India really is and overturning perceptions of what India was. Right? So we respect our history, but we interpret it and reimagine it in a modern way. And then that comes down to, so we take kulhas from the railway station and we contemporize it. So you can have sake in Japan, you can have wine in Italy. We take chanderi, which is used for saris, but we'll make dresses from it. So absolutely, I think if we, just like Muji represents Japan, or IKEA represents Sweden, Jeffrey Bawa represents Sri Lanka, we wanted to start the dialogue on what modern India is. And it's as much chess as it is Nicobar and many other things. So I say, for us, we had this dialogue last week, which is our social should not be about us only. It has to be about
India.
about contemporary India. And that's just one lens.
Well, that's lovely. I think that's so well articulated, and it's very almost inspirational to put India on the map from a design first, product first approach. And I want to double click there. But before we get there, how does somebody who spent like years in private equity investment banking choose to give up that life of working 12 15 hours a day, being in corporate offices, being on the other side, choose to give up that lifestyle to build a lifestyle first consumer brand? Like, how does that transition, which almost seems 180-degree, happen? And I'd also be curious to know, what was your right brain thinking to start the brand, right? Because it can't, like, one is the creative side, right? Which is the left brain. And what was your numbers thinking? How big can this get? What does it stand for? Like, talk to me about maybe how did you make the decision to become a founder?
Yeah.
And then what was that decision-making framework?
Okay, there's lots of different questions, so just make sure that I answer whatever you're asking for.
Yes.
But firstly, congratulations. You've crossed 100,000 subscribers.
Thank you so much.
That's incredible.
Thank you so
That's
much.
incredible.
That means a lot.
So to all your viewers, I presume a lot of your viewers are entrepreneurs or interested in entrepreneurship. So I'll hopefully address my answers in that spirit. And you're asking me what what made me start. I would say there's this cliche on follow your passion, right? But I think you've got to follow your passion with a bit of madness. And it was a mad decision. It was a crazy decision. I mean, as you said, a banker, I used to wear ties and
Yeah.
suits, uh, sat in all these corporate offices. Look at me even today. The most comfortable thing is cargos and a hoodie. So what do I know about fashion? But what I do know is people. And I do know a little bit about capital allocation. So at the end of the day, I think most businesses require good people decisions and good capital allocation decisions. And I deeply love understanding what makes a person tick.
Have you cracked that code? Can you tell us more? What makes a person tick?
I mean, let me think a little bit about it as we go through the conversation, and hopefully I'll keep refining it. But just to finish this train of thought,
Yes.
what I did is, and another theme I think for all entrepreneurs is being outside your comfort zone. So at various times, I continuously reinvent myself, and I'm always doing something outside my comfort zone. So as an investment banker in New York, I would go to Bollywood dancing classes.
Oh, wow.
I cannot hold the tune, but I would go and learn to play piano. So this was just another one where, and every time you're outside your comfort zone, new neural pathways start getting connected. So I think what I'm most proud of, when I saw my wife Simran and her creative eye, I said that has to be capitalized on. And and I said what I'll do is I'll put together the team. So my secret sauce was just finding people. So I liken myself to a coach at a football team, where even, let's say, Maresca at Chelsea has incredible players, but he still spends 20-30% of his time looking for new players. So even when you've got the best team, you're continuously looking for new talent. And so the first thing I did was I met 250 people to find the first nine.
Yeah.
Right. So if you ask how was someone crazy, it wasn't. I just knew that it was actually assembling a team first, then creating a culture. That said, we were very lucky because we had a certain amount of capital that we could invest on our own.
Sure.
But I keep asking entrepreneurs, what is your constraint to growth? And most of the time, I get the answer of capital.
Okay.
And I don't think capital is usually the constraint. I think it's usually people. For certain, for Nicobar, our constraint to growth is great people. Great people and a culture. And so, it was just when Simran had this design eye, and not just a design eye, she's the one who taught me about mindfulness. She's the one who rooted our brand in purpose. So we call her the guardian of the soul. So when we had that anchoring, I said I can put together
The rest.
a team. That said, I'm still a nervous entrepreneur. I look at the guys on your podcast and they are filled with so much confidence. I just worry all the time about how will we sustain what we're doing. And there was so much fear of failing. In fact, Bezos articulated this really well. It just wasn't a fear that we would not succeed. It was a fact that we would not succeed. But what I admire about Simran is I asked her the other day, if I told you at launch there's a 50-50 chance of succeeding, would you still go ahead? And she said, absolutely. And as we discussed it, it was because our purpose of creating this new way of India was so strong that we just felt we had to do it.
Yeah. Wow. No, I think that is incredibly well articulated. I love how, I think how complementary the skill sets were and how it came along, and what you've been able to produce out of it is, of course, now evident to the world, which we're all thankful for, especially because you're putting India on the map from a design first, product first lens. I'd love to understand the second part, which was the right brain thinking of, did you do your math as a ex, PE person as to how big this could become? Was that at all a thought as you were following your passion?
Yeah.
What is that like?
No, so it's very interesting, Jibraj. I probably saw 1,000 business plans in my life before starting
I'm
Nicobar.
sure.
So I used to be one of the best on Excel. And yet, the first document I wrote with the help of someone, a family member, Binu Baba, was a document on what I wanted my culture to be. So I didn't write a business plan. It was what I wanted the culture to be. And and intuitively, I knew that this can get large because I mean, what people wear clothes. They'll always wear clothes. We'll always give gifts. We'll always live in homes. So I knew there's enough opportunity. Of course, the cynics in the world would say about India is not premium, India wants mass, India wants discount. Okay. But I didn't, and then there's no brand being built in the premium space in India.
Yeah.
Luxury is suffering,
All of my questions.
Yeah. So we, in fact, looked at it the other way.
Okay.
And literally, we said, we are willing to invest 50 to 70 CR over a period of 5 years. And we will not question ourselves for 5 years. That was what we had the stomach for. And we said, we will build all our decisions will be taken with a 5-year horizon, not with a 3-month horizon. And when you do that, suddenly you don't have many competitors
Yeah.
because your decision making is different. I'll give you a very practical example. We overinvested in people from the beginning, and we preferred investing in people versus digital marketing. So, for example, our marketing cost has never exceeded 8% of our revenue.
Wow.
But our people cost at inception itself was something like 40% of our revenue in first year, 40, 45, I don't know. So, but I hired an unbelievable, very strong design team. And most startups would not do that. They'd spend on digital marketing. But we said we're here for 5 years, at least. So it was so the orientation was two things. One, we will invest 50 to 70, we'll not question ourselves for 5 years. We won't have any regrets if it doesn't work. If we give ourselves Bhagavad Gita, we'll put our best foot forward for the next 5 years. And we knew it is a fact that we could fail, and yet we were prepared to move ahead. So I would just say, I think even founders should take a certain horizon, saying we're going to give our best for X years and not question it.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a deep purpose when you do this, because then in the trying times, you come back to your purpose.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's just about quickly making money, then you lose that passion to keep going.
Yeah. And that's very, very interesting again. I think a lot of food for strong thought as you listen to this, because a lot of points are worth double clicking. But let's maybe move to some of the other foundational decisions you took while starting Nicobar, which feel fascinating. One of those are, getting the product really right.
Yeah.
You focused on the other one, which was already team, right? Like
Yeah.
the first 9 people, you mentioned this in the past
Yeah.
as well, 250 people. The other was an inner belief brand, right? This is
Yes.
something you talk about, which is that, hey, you define the philosophy depending on how you internally believe on it, inspired almost from a Steve Jobs of Apple, right?
Sure.
And put it out there. And maybe the other is also like the name took almost 3 months, right? I love
Sure.
that story. I heard it on a podcast, which is your golf buddy on
Yes.
a trip told you about. But anyway, what I want to summarize is that there were a lot of foundational decisions you took that
Yeah.
you still carry to heart, right?
Yes.
I would love to understand what
Yeah.
that means. And by extension, how can founders starting today also be more thoughtful in terms of making some of these almost, I don't know if they're irreversible decisions, but decisions that the team carries forward, decision that represents the brand. How does one go forward with that? For instance, you were also retail first, right? And you made that decision that will be retail alongside being online from get-go.
Yeah.
So if you can maybe summarize all of the foundational thoughts
Yeah.
and by extension the learnings from it, I would love that.
So, I had an amazing professor at business school, Professor Ben Esti. And on the last day of our finance class, he gave us an inspiring talk. And I remember what he said, which had nothing to do with finance, which was compromise is often a good solution, but think about what's not compromisable and stick to it. And so your question comes down to what is not compromisable. To really think hard about that,
Yeah.
right? And then there's a lot of other compromises one should make. The other lesson, very fascinating, but in finance, he taught us what is the reason that companies run out of cash? So people run out of business or close down. And, the usual answer, no good product market fit, product not good enough. And he said, no, there's only one reason companies run out of business. They run out of cash. We don't even think about cash. I mean, I'm trying to, my sons intuitively get the difference between profit and cash flow, right? And in the startup world, we don't think cash flow. So I'd say, what are the foundational decisions? One is, what is your purpose? I mean, just being able to articulate it in a way that connects not to the head, but to the heart. Right? That's incredibly important. Foundational decision is we will always overinvest in people. I love Facebook, I love Google. We could not have existed without Instagram. But I'd rather my money go to our team than to an anonymous Insta, Google, etc. So we decided we'll over-index always in people. We will always be a premium brand. We're not going to succumb to going down to mass level just because we admire mass, but it's not our DNA. It's not what we understand.
Sure.
And premium means balancing aspiration and access. You're too aspirational, you'll never be of size. You get too much access, you lose all your aspiration, you lose your premiumness. And, look at what Royal Enfield has done. It's a premium brand. It balances aspiration and access so well. It's a role model. So I'd say getting your purpose right, thinking about people, thinking about your culture. I mean, that I think if I had to say, I think just like people underestimate risk, or overestimate risk, actually. People overestimate risk and underestimate the opportunity if you look at things in a long term. Right? They overestimate the risk and they underestimate the real opportunity. I think founders generally, because I've seen the transition early in their careers, they underestimate the importance of culture. Then over time, they realize they underestimated culture and they underestimated brand. So we overestimated culture and brand right from the get-go. So I don't know, those are some of the foundational principles which all come under the rubric of articulating what is uncompromisable and sticking to it. And if you need to revisit it, that's fine. But at least know from the start, this is our North Star, this is what we're going to try and achieve.
No, that's amazing. I think that's again very fascinating to note that hey, you have to know the things that you don't want to compromise on.
Yeah.
And what I'm also hearing is a lot of I think founders end up making short-term decisions because you want to show revenue fast, you want to see success, or whatever those reasons are. But wherever you're looking at a short-term result versus something that's long-term, brand is long-term, culture is long-term, people are long-term. I think you have to make certain trade-offs and keep that horizon. So I think that's one underlying learning. I want to double-click on some of the things now. Maybe we can understand what goes into building a great product, right? You've definitely cracked it. Everybody loves the product. Everybody loves the aspiration. But I understand the customer insight behind it. And maybe you can help us with, okay, what does a customer feel when they're in a Nicobar store? What does the customer feel when buying the product?
Yeah.
What does it feel to wear it, right? What are the underlying customer insights to
Yeah.
almost sell luxury, aspiration, India? What are you trying to do behind the scenes to be able to back channel the customer and make sure that they are fulfilled?
So, Jivraj, we've not cracked anything. So let's be clear. We've done some things well,
Sure.
but because
No, I'm sure. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
tell you why I asked this question
Yeah.
because I think consumer founders articulate this really well. The
Yeah.
founder of Viva on our show said, right, that they realize that they want to make international flavors accessible. They want to make the bottle more easy to use, right? So they flip the bottle instead of having that Kisan bottle that you would have to,
Yes.
bump from the back.
Yeah.
You made a flip flop bottle
Yeah.
that you could just use, right?
Yes.
So some of these things are very
Yeah.
insightful to understand that, okay, what does the customer buy when they buy Nicobar? They buy luxury, they
Yes.
buy aspiration,
Yeah.
but how do you how do you look at that precisely?
Aparna Chandra is the head of our design on clothing.
Okay.
And she's been a friend of Simran's for the last 30 plus years. And we literally said, if Aparna joins this journey, we can create Nicobar. If she says no, there's no Nicobar.
Wow.
Okay. And then when we said, what do you want to do, Aparna? We went to Rishikesh, we had an offsite. What is the design vision? She said, I just want to design beautiful things. So, I mean, it was as simple as that. It was
People buy
as simple as
beautiful
that,
things.
right? That said, today, when we ask consumers why they buy from Nicobar, I would say a little bit like Paperboat in its early days. There's a little bit of connection to India that we all have within us that gets satisfied through Nicobar. So there's that one reason. Second, people love our design. And in a country of color, we launched with black and white as our first collection. So that's again what is modern India. There's a real simplicity that Indians are craving.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was all this elaborate stuff, and you can see the difference between all the elaborate weddings and the onset of destination weddings, which are more relaxed, which are more casual. So I think that we tapped into the desire for a more simple, relaxed, effortless way of living. And one thing that has been incredible is gifting. If you look at our history,
Yeah.
we are such a generous culture,
Yeah.
right? And we have a long, long history of insane gifting.
Yeah.
And that's what's Nicobar. I can honestly say, hand on my heart, I don't like bragging about Nicobar, but we have these alphabet mugs with scripts from various Indian languages on it. It's, I think, now 650. So a pair of mugs for 1,300, in my view, is the number one gift in that price point. And forget in that price point, even under 5,000 bolo. So I just think we tapped into
That market.
the market, and then we also, I think, are overturning the view that thoughtful gifting has to be expensive. I mean, you can get terrible gifts for 10,000, and then you can get just a pair of Nicobar mugs for 1,300. So, and we purposely did that because we always want somebody to be able to come into Nicobar and be able to afford what's there. And then the second is, even if you cannot afford, we want our store to be an oasis in urban jungles so that you just feel a little more relaxed when you come into our store. So we try and make sure that there's no pressure to buy. Of course, our teams have targets, etc., but we work very hard. We don't call them salesmen, we call them brand ambassadors. So, I think these are some elements to your question of the consumer insight. It is tapping into a sense of India. It's tapping into a simple, relaxed, effortless way of living. It's tapping into a bit more mindful way because I think people realize we're a fairly authentic brand.
Yeah.
I think it's tapping into India's history of gifting.
I love that. No, I think the second part especially because I think the simplicity in your answer also shows, which is that, hey, you make great products which stand for something, which look beautiful. You don't oversell them and people will buy because people fundamentally customers fundamentally like great things.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's the mistake. We don't need to talk down to consumers. They get it.
They get it.
They get it,
Yeah.
And I keep talking about what are we doing to pull versus push. So digital marketing is push.
Absolutely.
And it's okay. We have to do it. We will do it.
Yeah.
But are we balancing it enough so that the pull factor is much stronger than the push factor? And I think that's what I request the ecosystem to create more aspiration, to create more pull, to create more desire.
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
Not easy.
But I think that's great, and that's what's important in brand building.
Yeah. And it requires deliberate
for me,
effort.
for example, showing up on this podcast, is a way potentially of creating pull, because my role is actually most important role of a founder is to inspire and create hope. And if you inspire, people will come to your brand.
Absolutely. I think that's again, I love the articulation on all of the answers, and it's very, very direct and understandable, which I love. I also agree with the corporate gifting part. I was actually on the gifting part, sorry.
Yeah.
I was actually at a friend's, and I think they had an Excel box, which was Nicobar
Yes.
for Diwali, I think. And it was lovely, just from everything, including the box, of how it was designed, how the inside was, how the, of course, elements and the products themselves were. Absolutely loved it.
So I want to tell you something about that particular order. Firstly, very grateful for Excel.
Yeah.
And what I want to tell you about this story is there's a lovely young lady, Neha,
Okay.
in our merchandising team. So what I think is another sign of reasonable success is things are happening without me knowing it.
Yeah.
And Neha is the one, she's in the merchandising team, not in the corporate gifting team. On her own, she found this contact, developed it, and then worked on customizing it for Excel.
Yeah. It had Excel's name on it. as
Yeah,
well.
and also the product selection, etc. So that's what I find so amazing about this journey, because I said I want Nicobar to be the place where people come to do their greatest work.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the place where people have done their greatest work and come to Nicobar. So it's like the Chelsea team. It's one of the youngest squads.
Yeah.
And what their strategy has been, which has got a lot of criticism also, has been to find younger players, lock them into longer contracts, as opposed to paying top dollar for the stars. So for me, of course, I've got some people who are already stars, but the greatest joy for me is when I see people like Neha, doing their greatest work and doing things that are beyond what they're hired for. She's not expected to go get corporate orders, and that's what I find is what I love about what I've done here is I think 90% plus of people who have worked at Nicobar will probably say it's the best environment they worked in.
Wow.
And
That is phenomenal.
yeah, so for me, and I know I'm coming from a very privileged position because we had a certain amount of capital. Younger founders don't have that. That said, I just think that, at least in this space, you need to have a balanced scorecard, which is one, all your growth metrics, which everyone focuses on, but two, brand, and three, team.
Got it. No, that's super, super nice to hear. Rahul, I would love to also understand maybe more dynamics on the business in itself. So if you
Yeah.
could maybe help us understand, because there are multi-categories, right? Like there is
Yeah.
fashion, there's home, there's gifting. I think in one of the podcasts you mentioned 25% of your e-commerce are actually global, right?
Okay.
So if you can, and maybe retail footprint, etc., how many stores?
Yeah.
If you can give us a mind map of,
Sure.
how the business is like just doing from these metrics, like where do Indians buy from, right? Like which are your most like selling geographies, maybe, etc. I think that'll be really helpful to understand maybe where aspirational India is spending or buying from.
Yeah, Jivraj, you're making us sound more thoughtful than we really are. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because one of the other lines that I use is that Nicobar is a combination of magic and logic,
Yeah.
and so the logic part is overestimated. It's just some magic that's happened,
Yeah.
and we're all beneficiaries of a lot of luck. That said, our revenue breakdown is about 50% is women's clothing,
Okay.
15% is men's clothing, and about 35% is home,
Okay.
and 5% is jewelry.
Got it.
So that's the revenue mix.
Awesome.
In terms of volume, home, which contributes 30 to 35%, will be about 50 to 60% of the volume. And gifting is a subset primarily of home. There's also some gifting of shirts, there's also gifting of jewelry, but home is a big contributor to gifting. And I think in terms of geography, I'd say about, just because we opened primarily in Bombay, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, but now we've opened in Chandigarh, doing incredible.
Wow.
Ahmedabad, doing incredible.
Love it.
Okay, so Nicobar, there's a long tail of customers who appreciate Nicobar. So we have to go out and find that long tail in all these places.
Sure.
Ahmedabad is such a lovely design city. So now, we retrospectively fit this. That's why we're doing well, etc. But to me, that's again, I'm so excited about what's going on outside the big metros.
And how number of stores are?
Today we're 22.
Okay.
Lucknow will be our 23rd.
Okay.
And I easily see us doubling our footprint.
Yeah.
And
And any stores outside India? When is that going to happen? I know. we love-
inshallah, we really feel, I'm very excited about what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And we have a lovely existing customer base in the Middle East. I feel culturally the Middle East and India have a lot in common also.
Yeah.
And we are in partnership discussions with someone.
I love that.
And inshallah, let's see, hopefully next year we'll be outside India also.
Yeah. No, we had the
With a
Manyavar-
physical presence.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of Manyavar stores outside India,
Yeah.
and they really sell well because
Yeah.
there are multiple Indians and folks outside who appreciate
Yeah.
ethnic wear, which is as Indian as it gets.
Yeah.
And I think it sells. And then companies like yours, I think, are truly global in nature. So I was
The
curious to
only thing,
understand.
First of all, big call out to Manyavar.
Yeah.
Amazing. We love celebrating other brands. So Manyavar, amazing what they've achieved from a business success and how they've scaled. Lots of lessons to be learned. That said, we're very different because we don't focus ethnic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's a very
And-
different
and so-
category.
yeah, and Muji had to be known outside Japan to be global. So for us, winning, if we go to Dubai, is not just winning in the Indian diaspora. It's
It's
very,
very-
important for us to win in the Middle East
Correct.
population. So
Absolutely.
that's the difference, I think, for us
For-
is,
absolutely.
the Indian diaspora will be an anchor, but
Yeah.
we are going to make a nod to the Middle East.
Yeah.
We will create specific product that is India anchored and yet is a nod to the Middle East.
No, 100%. I can imagine. I think one of the stories you mentioned in another podcast was how you visited a doctor in New York, and then the assistant of the doctor
Yes.
who was an American,
Ukrainian.
Ukrainian, and
Yes.
she
Yes.
was using a Nicobar product, and
Yes.
she asked you, "How do you know Nicobar?"
Yeah.
And no, I meant definitely that this will stand for India across the world for people of all nationalities, and they will appreciate India for what Nicobar stands for, which is
Yes.
why I was very curious to know when your international expansion is on the cards. But no, this is great. I think it gives us a sense of how the business is split. I would double click a bit on, for consumer brands, we just see the products. Can you maybe give us a reference point to what goes on behind the scenes from a supply chain lens? You manufacture your own, because it feels very different, right?
Yeah.
So if you can give us a sense of supply chain for some of these things, it could be super interesting.
Look, India is a country of textiles, fabrics, right?
Yeah.
So all our clothing is done in India.
Perfect.
I see a big shift, which is when we launched Nicobar, we wanted the highest quality from day one. And a lot of the guys who manufactured for export did the best quality. We were turned down by about 40, 50 exporters who didn't want to work with us.
Why?
Because minimum order volumes, Indian companies don't pay, all that. But now things have turned.
They all want to work with you.
Not just us, I think a lot of people are seeing things changing in India
Absolutely.
and a huge opportunity over here. And that gives me a lot of pride because, for us it is, people ask me what our competition is. It's actually, in some sense, it's almost changing people's mindsets. That is our biggest competition. My team says, for example, again, I don't want to brag about our products, but if you've not bought a Nicobar kurta, please buy one. In my view, it's the best kurta in the market. Bhavish Agarwal at Ola, he went out and said, why don't men wear kurtas to work? Now, for us, that'll be a success. If we can change people's perceptions and have kurtas at work. In the summer, with all the heat, it's like the perfect thing to wear.
Yeah.
I mean, wearing jeans in the summer heat.
It's a pain.
Yeah, but we're conditioned, right? Now we have to change some of those mindsets. It takes time. It takes a long time. So, back to your question on supply chain. Most of it is done in India. That said, as you know, our inspiration is called Journeys Across the Indian Ocean. That's been our anchor.
Yeah.
So, we do get in the home category, we do get some amazing Vietnamese product. We've got some great Portuguese product. Now that will be about 20-30 because again, going 20-30% of our home mix. Because again, but there's amazing stuff coming out of Moradabad. So going back to our mission, and that's why I said, think about what's uncompromisable. The whole idea is to champion an Indian ecosystem.
Yeah.
So we continuously look for the supply chain primarily being in India. Then again, if you look at the macro trends and all, there's a whole government push
of course.
to push it. That said, we should embrace what's going on the best in the rest of the world and bring it to India.
100%. I was just curious to understand because, it seems very flashy when a consumer founder is talking about all things brand, design, but it's just like the boring work is perhaps back of the scenes around the supply chain, around, sourcing, etc.
Yeah.
So I was curious to know.
Yes. And I think the organizational challenge is to make sure that every team is respected, right? Otherwise, you become a team where, it's the designers who get the highest.
Yeah. You don't glorify anything then.
We try not to.
As much as possible. Yeah.
That said, my design team thinks I favor marketing. My marketing team thinks I favor merchandising. My merchandising thinks, so that's good.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks I favor somebody. But I genuinely keep saying that at Nicobar, the functioning unit is not an individual. It's a team.
Yeah.
And I think that's been one of my biggest challenges is how do you design compensation systems also to reward teamwork versus individual performance.
Yeah. Are there any learnings around that? Because I think
I don't know. I mean, earlier you were saying Satya Nadella was on a podcast with Bill Gurley. So I want to go back and listen to it because I think what I feel is Microsoft's had the greatest kind of turnaround. And from what I heard, he talked a lot about Microsoft actually being a siloed organization. And he changed the systems to be
we're interconnected.
Yeah. And so maybe there's some learnings over there.
Sure. I'd love to also focus on, and I know that you don't focus on design, and you mentioned that everything apart from design is what you look at, but a conversation on Nicobar is incomplete without mentioning the design brilliance. And I also want to play devil's advocate as I ask this question, right? I'll probably go ahead and mention, it'll be a bit controversial, but let's say, premise being India doesn't have great design talent or great design products, right? Like I'll go as far as that. How have you been able to, let's say, not turn that around? And again, I don't mean to glorify any of this, but it's just like facts, what consumers believe in, right? Like Nicobar products have great design, you've had great designers, you continue obsessing over design.
Yes.
How do you make it happen? Like A, how do you look at this problem statement? If true, if not, please rectify it. And then how do you make it happen at Nicobar?
Look, again, we just got lucky.
Okay.
because really, and I want to mention four people because in addition to Simran, they've been the design team from the beginning. So Aparna Chandra led clothing, Arya Nerkar and Rajiv Purohit led home, and Divya led travel and accessories and jewelry. And I keep telling them that you're not a success till you create 10 more Aparnas, 10 more Rajivs, 10 more Aryas, right? So I just say, first of all, we got very lucky that we had this team who not only joined us but has stayed with us.
10 years in.
10 years in, yeah.
Wow.
And including Divya now works with us out of Pune, Arya now works with us out of Singapore, and they're trying to nurture the next generation. And we have some amazing people, in the next generation: Manya, Namit, Viti. I mean, there's lots of the next generation, right? And in terms of design, it's really interesting you say this because I do worry. I do worry whether we have
Enough great designers.
enough great designers to take over the mantle from Aparna, Rajiv, Arya, Divya. That said, I look at, look at Zomato.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Phenomenal user experience, phenomenal design.
Yeah.
Forget that. Their storytelling,
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm told there are only 4 people who do all the storytelling. I can't believe that. So, look at all these user experiences now. Paytm also.
Oh, yeah.
Just so I think the talent exists. I think
you have
what
to
doesn't
channelize.
exist is an atmosphere of mentorship. So the raw talent exists, but do we enough bring it out of people? So, look at what's happened in IPL, right? Because of IPL now, so much more talent is nurtured. And that's what happened, whether Sundar Pichai, whether Satya Nadella, the same individual found an environment that nurtured that talent. And I think that's where India's getting. We're behind it. But so to me, it's not a question on the raw talent. So I used to say that people is our constraint, and it still is. But actually, it's also the ability of our teams to nurture and bring out the best. So actually, because it takes about 2 years for someone to truly become Nicobar. And it's up to us. I've got one CEO. I've got my second CEO, and my role is, can I nurture CEOs? And it's not easy. It's the greater success is making someone else successful.
Yeah.
So to your specific thing, I believe raw talent exists, but the systems to nurture, which require culture and which require certain orientation from the leader, is where the gaps are that are being fixed.
Got it. No, that is again very, very well put, and it fundamentally clarifies the structure. I also agree. I think Brian Chesky talks about this as well, right? There are very few designers who are also founders or with a business bent of mind. He often says that Airbnb is the only sort of design first CEO in the Fortune 500 companies.
Right.
And we need more of those because that's when the world will be hopefully a better place. Designers have a lot of empathy, etc., for the environment. So that's extremely helpful.
But I'll just say, we had a beautiful campaign called Nicobark.
Okay.
And that's because there's a girl in our office in the design team, and she goes out at 5 a.m. every morning to feed 100, 200 dogs, and her grandmother gets up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. to cook for the dogs. And when our design team and the marketing team and all found out that this young girl Sana is doing this, they used our leftover fabrics to create coats for street dogs for the winter. So you see these lovely coats with the star, which is one of our symbols in the library, and that's what I mean. And then they went out and they clothed the dogs in the streets. They're now selling these jackets online and in our stores, and all the proceeds go to charity. But that's another example of our environment enabled young talent to express their design and creativity. And that same person sitting in another organization may never have expressed it. So that's why I think the role of culture,
Environment.
the raw talent is there.
Got it.
But the environment
Yeah, no, that's very empowering to hear. I think anybody listening hopefully will get the gist to perhaps, go out there and create the environment, not blame it on something which isn't systematic, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's my takeaway. But we've covered a lot of ground. I'd love to cover maybe the capital allocation ground as well,
Yeah.
right? And you've been bootstrapped, and of course, you have built it in a certain way.
Yes.
I'd love to understand how you look at businesses in general, also
Yeah.
because of your previous background, and perhaps what your learnings on capital allocation have been, and how have you perhaps any additional leading advice to how founders can look at it the same way.
I mean, that's a very broad question,
Yeah.
but generally I grew up very middle class. So to me, 50 crores was an insane amount of money. Um, and so I put a lot of pressure on myself to make Nicobar profitable. Inshallah, we actually now pay tax. So, my head of finance, Shashi, called me up and said, we're filing tax returns. I said, "Arey, don't we have enough losses left over, etc." He said, "Nay, we've exhausted
Lovely.
everything." So I said, "Theek hai, Shashi, this is a proud day. We're giving back to the Indian government. Fantastic."
Amazing.
So there was a model of, of, of,
Profitability
of profitability focus early on. But look, some of the greatest businesses have been built, including Amazon, without.
on the back of losses.
Yeah. And so I think you just have to align your stakeholders into which model it is. And in my view, the disconnect between entrepreneurs and the funding ecosystem is entrepreneurs complain that the VCs are putting so much pressure on me to grow faster.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, the entrepreneur is also showing a business plan that shows that he will grow faster in order to get such a valuation.
Correct.
So I think you have to just decide which game you're playing, the short game or the long game. And in honesty, again, even the VC system is evolving. Uh, but I wish there were more long-term, genuine long-term providers of capital, because when you make a decision based on a 5-10 year horizon versus a 6-month horizon, you will make different decisions.
Yeah.
And so I think both models are very viable. Only thing is, whichever model you choose to go for, make sure your stakeholders are aligned
True.
on that. And in general, unfortunately, I have to say that in the current environment, the VC funded model is more practical. There are very few bootstrapped successes at scale,
Yeah.
but the few there are incredible.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's also really, really helpful. To close the loop on this, I probably just have a final question on retail, and then we'll conclude with a couple of concluding questions on your personal persona. But retail just feels like, I mean, while online buying is great,
Yeah.
every founder eventually wants to go retail because
Yeah.
that's where a majority of India still spends money.
Yes.
Of course, your stores are very well designed, experience is great. I'd love to understand if you could share learnings from building successfully in retail, like how fast should you grow? What should you consider in your experience that can actually optimize for conversions? How do you decide which location to open at? Any learnings on that front would be really helpful.
Again, we had an amazing individual from the Northeast. His name is Nongo, and he helped design our retail experience. And he came up with this 2 or 3 tenets. I keep going back to answering the why,
Yeah.
right, and the purpose, right, before you design a
Absolutely.
retail space again. So he said that, and I used this line before, but he said that our retail spaces have to be oasis in urban jungles. And then he also said that our retail spaces are places where theater happens. Okay, now we may not live up to it fully, but these are good anchors to have, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people, if you've got a great product, go with retail. If you don't, stay online. Because you expose yourself. I mean, the quality is evident once you touch and feel and use the product, right? So, and I think the more premium you are, the more offline will make sense. And for us, touchwood, retail has been amazing. But what I keep telling people is it's the best place to learn and talk to your consumers. So you're investing, instead of investing on marketing and digital marketing, talk to your customers when they're in store,
Yeah.
right? And I just got a great insight from somebody in Dubai, which is we tend to talk to our, and this is just a last week or 10 day. I feel like such an idiot that I haven't focused on this for the last 9 years. But, like we've already discovered why our consumers buy from us. Okay, it's around mindfulness, it's around design, it's around modern India, it's around gifting, it's around fabrics, it's around quality, design. Even in our high street stores, our conversion is, let's say, 40%. Okay? But that still means that out of 10 people coming in, 6 are not buying. And we don't know
Why?
because we keep asking the guys who are buying. And so the biggest initiative I have for the next 3 months is talking to that 60% who's not buying to understand why. So when you talk about retail, these are the things that you can solve in retail. So I'll give you another example. We have some amazing loungewear. And it's my team told me there's something called loungewear. So it's the difference between sleep and lounge,
Okay.
or a combination of
Right.
sleep and lounge. Because I kept saying, we all sleep maybe 6-8 hours, and I said, how come we're not designing clothes for sleepwear?
Yeah.
And I said, what a great market opportunity. Then I went out and I talked to men. What do you sleep in?
Usually my random t-shirt, random pajamas.
Okay, there it is, right?
Yeah.
So I'll design grey sleepwear, but people don't buy sleepwear. They're using some other T-shirt.
Yeah.
So
Something I usually wear.
yeah, and I swear we have this women's collection loungewear. It is stunning. Okay, but these are the kinds of learnings from the retail. Is you have the chance. So retail. So to me, retail is not just a place to buy product. It's actually a place to
Collect
learn
insights.
about your consumers. It's also, I keep saying our digital marketing, our marketing is 8% of our revenue. The reality also is about 15% of our revenue is rent.
Right.
Rent
Is the marketing expense for retail.
Yes. So, and I think it's money really well spent. If you invest in your windows, if you tell a story there. So yeah, I do. I mean, at the risk of creating more competition for myself by everyone looking for retail space, when I think of the larger ecosystem,
Yeah.
let's all create some magical spaces that people visit, that live there every day.
Yeah.
When you go into my store, you have a beautiful neroli fragrance. Okay, so even if you just bring a little bit of joy for 2 minutes when someone walks in and doesn't need to buy, let's all go do that. Let's live everyday lives.
No, absolutely. And it's phenomenal. I often say that the malls in 10 years will be full of new age brands, like if you look at it, because there's such great work happening across the country with
Yeah.
consumer products.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when we have benchmarks like yours, right? And other people innovating as well. I think it builds a great playbook. So thanks so much for sharing. What's the quick revenue split between retail and online?
So we're about 30%
Online.
online,
70%.
35% online, and 65% retail. Yeah.
Got it. No, that's amazing. But this has been great. I think I've learned a ton about the business. But what I'm more fascinated about, and it's interesting. When I first spoke to you, also you were like, "Hey, I'll do the podcast, but tell me more about yourself. Tell me why you want to do this."
Yes.
And when I've observed leading up to this conversation as well, you talking on other podcasts, you seem like, and again, I don't mean to glorify in any way, but you seem like a very well-rounded individual who focuses and prioritizes mindfulness, who loves his family, values the fact that you're building a company alongside your family,
Yeah.
who loves his children, loves sport, a bunch of things. You have multiple facets to yourself. It'll be difficult to dive deeper into each, but I'll try to. Maybe we can start with if you had to give us a blanket of your life or like a value system that you live by, right?
Yeah.
You've worked multiple years. You've seen, the MD life at peace. You've built a great company now. You've been surrounded by great individuals who build great companies around you. Talk to us about what your values are fundamentally, if you can help us summarize, or what is the code for life, right? Without, again, I don't need to glorify,
Yeah.
but just need to understand how you live life.
Jivraj, it's so difficult talking about yourself. Okay.
I'm sure.
But I've always said this, right from growing up, that I feel like I'm the luckiest individual in life.
Wow.
And
Tell us more. Why do you feel that way? And this is just since you've grown up?
Yeah. I grew up the son of a naval officer. If you look at the colonies we grew up in, they were just so clean, so protected. So, everybody was equal. Sports was a big emphasis. So that's my growing up years. How many people get a chance to go to the US and study in the 80s? I had so many mentors along the way, and the way people have looked after me. Then I come back and I'm so grateful to be married to Simran. The Lal family is just an incredible family. It's not easy for a brand to succeed. We got lucky. So it's just been, I have, I love sports. Over a round of golf, I met Sadhguru and I started meditating in 2009. I haven't missed a day of meditation ever since. So many lovely, lovely, lovely things along the way. So actually, every day after my meditation, I always say three things. I'm so lucky, I'm blessed, and I'm grateful. So if you ask me about my values, it's just reminding myself that there's a lot to be grateful for. That I am blessed, and therefore I have conviction that the next step that I'm taking is being blessed and will be the right one. And no matter what comes in my life, it's there for a reason. And at the end of the day, luck plays a big role. So the way we connected on the podcast also, I love your journey. Even before this, we talked about different roads you could take. So people have helped me, and I just want to, talk about my experiences. My kids keep telling me, don't give advice. They're right.
Yeah.
Because we're also, but at least talk about your experiences, and someone will pick up something in it. I'll pick up something
100%.
from your experience. So I think, that's what we try and inculcate with our children. We're very lucky. Our children realize they're lucky kids. They live with gratitude. The other day, my son, we have an amazing tennis coach, Jaideep. And he spends his life in the Nizamuddin Basti, teaching kids to learn through sport. And my son, Arjun, goes to the Basti to teach the kids. And now he's teaching them English. We got the India rugby player to come and teach them. We got some cricketer to come and teach. My son goes to the Basti to teach the kids. One day he had a fight with me about something where he thought I was getting angry. Next day he goes to the Basti. He comes back and says, Dad, I actually forgive you. I'm like, okay, thank you. So I said, what happened? So he said, Dad, I was in the Basti today, and I realized how lucky we are. And I realized what we fought about yesterday. It's so small compared to what the kids in the Basti have to fight for. So I think just putting yourself in situations where you realize how much we have, because we always tend to focus on what we don't have. But so I start my day with gratitude journaling. And it's amazing when you start doing that, the kinds of things that come out. So anyway, I don't want to sound so serious. I have a lot of fun in life. I'm very lucky. I play a lot of golf. I'm privileged to have the benefit of time to play a lot of sport. I just created my dream office, which has a gym next to my office.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I think, thank you so much for mentioning that. I think it goes a really long way. A part of that I resonate with because I got so lucky to start the podcast almost out of luck.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful to have these conversations, learn from people like yourself, and hopefully folks will pick up. And none of the effort is to not give prescriptive advice on
Yes.
the podcast at all. It's
Yeah.
just to hopefully benefit from your learnings, keep the repeatable parts, hopefully,
Yeah.
and so that people don't have to go through their own mistakes. But thank you so much for mentioning that. I think that's lovely. The other thing is, I think let's take a different outlook to your personality. You mentioned also that you're a very type A personality, right? And you've done like great things, of course, right? Across your career spectrum. If I were to look at your LinkedIn profile, not knowing the name,
Yeah.
an aspirational 20-year-old would be like, hey, I would love to have a career like that.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what that means to you. What does type A mean? How do you like stay on top of your game? What's the discipline you had, like maybe in the younger years, right? Like golf is maybe today
Yeah.
in your lifestyle. But what was the intense Raul Rai who was succeeding, growing his career in PE, in IB, early days of Nicobar?
So, Jivraj, just so the point doesn't get lost, I talk about our culture is about fun and performance.
Sure.
We focus a lot on performance.
Tell us more.
And just last week, my visual design team was feeling overworked. So we went out in the lawn, we had a little chat,
Yeah.
and I asked them, okay, come back. And these are all, I think they're all in their 20s. They put out some amazing work. So I asked them, come back, and each of you, I just want 2 ideas from you.
Okay.
But I need it in writing. The first is, what can we do to make Nicobar more performance oriented?
Okay.
The second, what can we do to make work more fun?
Okay.
Okay. Today we implemented something which came. So then we met last week. Everybody went through the ideas. We prioritized a few. So let me talk about what we ended up prioritizing.
Sure.
The first one we prioritized on Thursday, which is effective today, is no meetings on Mondays that are cross-functional after 1 p.m. And so it's a version of Mindful Mondays. Back to our purpose, and the team wanted space to plan their week ahead. So we said they wanted to do it for the full day. I said, listen, let's start small. Let's see if it works. But we implemented it like that. So today is Mindful Monday. Then I sent a mail. There was a calendar meeting already. I said, sorry. And I think people will have more fun when they see that there's enough space in their calendar.
Sure.
The second idea that came out, thanks to a woman named Joanna, is it's some version of a war room where we can come together and be creative. And so that room is now going to be decorated with the usual post-it notes, pads, and anybody can call a meeting where the idea is to come together, be creative, and brainstorm. And I think the first one is being called for January 5th for some reason.
Okay.
Okay. So these are the kinds of things that people feel will drive more fun, because what we realized is in a place like Nicobar, people want space to be creative. So we discussed this. If someone's feeling burnt out because they did 10 hours of work and it was, churning out newsletters, yevo. On the other hand, if they did 20 hours of work, but 10 hours was newsletter and 10 hours was brainstorming, creating, they'd feel less tired with the 20 hours of work.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's what I just think we all need space to nurture our soul. So in that sense, back to your type A, actually what I'm working on the most
Yeah.
is trying to be more lazy and sleep more. My son said he didn't do so well on an exam because he was out the previous night. He just took his SATs, and the teacher told him the SAT was on Saturday. The teacher said, work hard till Thursday, but promise me you're not going to do any work on Friday. Right? So I just think that the mistake I made as type A was I worked nonstop. And it's, I don't want anyone to misinterpret what I'm saying. So luxurious, he's older, he can do this. No. All I'm saying is if it takes half an hour to say you're switching off, okay, half an hour, take half an hour. Just start small.
Yeah.
And you put out a post on your WhatsApp
Oh, yeah.
about just starting.
Correct.
And the momentum itself will give you something, right?
Yeah.
So my only request to founders is take half an hour today for my sake.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Carve out half an hour. Half an hour, no. My meditation is 21 minutes. So let's say from Raul I learned, okay, 21 minutes I'm going to take for myself. So I just feel like, and though something will come out of it, I promise you.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's my big learning is, are we all taking
Time off.
just like we created Mindful Monday at Nicobar,
Yeah.
where people have the afternoon. You can talk to people one-on-one. You can talk to your own team. You just can't do anything cross-functional because some of our meetings end up becoming quite large.
Yeah. That's super interesting. I think there's a lot of research that also says that you have to almost bracket for like boring time or like not doing anything in order to let the creativity fluids flow,
Yeah.
in order to recharge, in order to actually contribute to everything that is productive.
Yeah.
You need enough time, space, energy, recharge.
Yeah.
So
My wife is probably laughing because she's saying he's spewing all this and he doesn't do it. But you noticed last night I asked you to delay this podcast because I wanted to sleep a little bit more because my son wanted to wake up at 12:30 to watch
the game.
the game. And so I wanted to prioritize a little extra sleep.
Yeah.
And you were kind enough to
No, of course.
delay the podcast.
Yes.
But I'd say, good sleep is so critical.
I agree. No, I agree. Thanks so much for sharing. I think the benefit of so many of these conversations is we get to learn from experience. And that's why I think we need more of these conversations across the board, because hopefully when a person in that chair with your regard, with everything behind your back in terms of experience, says it, it reinforces it more.
Yeah, but it's, people must be going, I'm wasting 1 hour to listen to somebody who's telling me sleep is important. I mean, surely there's something a little more interesting to say than that.
I'm hoping that they'll say that he built Nicobar and had a great career, and thus he prioritizes sleep. So there must be some merit to it. So I'll probably frame it like that. But this has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Maybe towards the end, just last two questions, right? One of them is, if you weren't doing all of this, right? Like, let's paint an alternative picture just to get the imagination flowing.
Yeah.
What would the last 10 years look like instead?
Last 10 years.
Yeah. So we're removing the Nicobar from the picture, hypothetically.
Yes.
Only for the benefit of a
Yeah.
great conversation and your imagination.
Yeah.
What would the last 10 years have looked like if Nicobar was not in the frame?
And I had any talent, whatever talent I want, I have.
Yes.
So it doesn't.
Yeah. Let's make this imaginative.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, I look, I've always wanted to be like a rock star.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I can't sing, but I love the thought
Of performing in front
of
of a...
performing in front of a huge crowd.
I love that.
Right. And just, I'm a decent public speaker.
Of course.
So
Decent
it's
as in-
not just music, but it's entertaining and captivating. And I remember Simran and I went to a Coldplay concert and, waving the India flag while singing. I mean, just those moments are just like magical. So yes, I would love to have been like a rock star. That's one. The second is I have learned so much from sports in my life, and I continue to learn. And interestingly, my first love was squash, but more recently it's golf, and I now compete in the seniors, and I still aspire, like just being absolutely world class. But I would have loved a life of a professional sportsman.
I love that.
It's such a meritocracy. And for me, this meritocracy is, my kids love Messi, we love Messi. To hear those stories, so many Indian people have just been lifted out of, and then inspire. And the role, that I kept coming back to. Ultimately, as you grow older in life, your role is to inspire and to create hope amongst many. And I think sports people have done that.
Plenty.
Yeah.
I love
So,
that.
so that would have been amazing. And then, interestingly, more recently, if I could abdicate my responsibility at Nicobar, I would love to be a full-time dad for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
My sons are in 10th and 11th. And I'm like, I wish I just spent time with them in these 3 years. So, that's another one where time flies. I feel like they were born in 2007, 2009. And I did leave investment banking and private equity so that I could have more flexibility in my life, so that if my son needed me to go to school for a sports day at 2 o'clock, I could go. So I've worked harder at some level at Nicobar than I did at Goldman Sachs or General Atlantic, but I've worked with more flexibility. But so yeah, I don't know, rock star, sportsman, full time dad.
I love that. That was definitely interesting. We should have started there, I think, especially with the rock star bit. But that is lovely. For the last question, and this is fairly
What would you do?
alternatively, honestly, I actually often say that, going back to the lucky point, that I just feel I would be a full time podcaster, I think.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Like, it's not removing the podcast from my life, but if I could,
Yeah.
I just, in these moments, I'm in this sense of flow and zen
Amazing.
that is difficult to explain, because I'm learning,
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I'm extrapolating. I could just do this for hours and not get tired. But I also want to be mindful of the audience, which is why I do this for a limited time.
Do you synthesize? So the podcast is usually an hour or something. Do you synthesize lessons from the podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, one of those that I think you might appreciate, I have a note called "What Do Successful People Chase?"
Right.
And this is on the back of, let's say, if you've reached some amount of material success capitalistically,
Yeah.
what do you then chase? And there are 5 pointers.
Okay.
Very easy.
Yeah.
Freedom,
Yeah.
health, purpose, acts of service, and mastery.
Okay.
I think the idea behind all of these, and I can explain, but
Yes,
for the benefit
lovely.
of time,
Lovely.
is that, hey, I mean, mastery is you often do things when you're chasing money or some
Yes.
amount of success to get results. So it may not be perfect, but you
Yes.
chase mastery beyond
Yeah.
a point.
Yeah.
You chase purpose beyond satisfying your immediate needs.
Yeah.
You chase health. I've heard from so many folks on the other side that, hey, there were 7-8 years of intense effort,
Yeah.
and then they prioritized health.
Yeah.
Deep, meaningful relationships is actually the other one, right?
That's
Which
what-
is that
Yes.
I think beyond the money, I think everybody on the show has mentioned that, hey, it's the people, right, that matter. Either their team, the people they interacted with along the journey, or whom they have in terms of their friends in
Yeah.
their life. And then purpose is, we mentioned purpose. I think I'm missing one. Freedom of time and
Yeah.
energy, right? Like
Yeah.
part of what you mentioned as a
Yeah.
dad, right? Is that if you can be in control of your calendar and do what you want to without having to worry about the money,
Yeah.
that is immensely liberating in life.
True.
So I think so much of what I do actually is learn on the show. Like I often say, sorry to interrupt, but I'm the biggest benefactor because I research,
Yeah.
I have those conversations, and then I get to build patterns from all of those conversations because
Amazing.
I am part of all.
Yeah. And when you say you've synthesized this, is it in a podcast? Is it
Oh
in
no, it's
writing?
notes. It's usually notes. It's
And
usually
where is the notes available?
personal notes actually.
You should publish.
Right? I should.
You should publish.
I
Because
will.
I like what you said on the 5. And for example, like when you truly understand the process is more important than, or the journey is more important than the destination. It's a beautiful feeling and it ties to mastery. So for example, luckily I'm reasonably good at golf and I'm just getting better and better and better. And it is because of the pursuit of mastery. I mean, look, even if I win, let's say the global seniors, PGA seniors, it's not going to change my life. And yet I'm pursuing it
Because of the mastery.
because of that mastery,
Yeah.
right? And
No, that's so well put, by the way. Like, I don't chase a number on the podcast, which is why my pursuit is always to be the best host I
Yeah.
can possibly be.
yes,
Because I love it enough to just be great at it all the time.
Yeah.
And I want to keep pushing the boundary of what that means.
Yeah.
So after this recording, when the, I get the raw cut, I'll actually look at it again because I'll be like, hey, what could I have done better?
Yeah.
When we end this conversation, I will ask you, what could I have done better? Because
Sure.
the constant pursuit is mastery and
Yeah.
not an immediate result. So I think if you remove some amount of the output, which is again a luxurious, privileged state
Yes.
of mind, you can truly pursue mastery.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and that's why we started the podcast about me wanting to be American when I left, and then discovering how much I wanted to be Indian, and it just comes back to this beautiful Bhagavad Gita, which is exactly that. that take the end result out. So
No, this was interesting, but yeah, no, I am so glad we did this. For the last question, which is a standardized one on the podcast, but one that I really love. It's also a way to go back memory lane and summarize what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to achieve learnings from Raul's career, learnings from him having built a great company and having experience in other fields of work. If you could go back and write to yourself, I usually go back to a pivotal point in life and say that, okay, summarize all your learnings, perhaps so that the benefit of hindsight is captured in 2-3 minutes. But maybe when you were graduating HBS, right? Let's say after that you pursued investment banking, PE, then you did Nicobar. But if you could go back and write to yourself, and this is not about what you would have changed, it's just to condense the learnings that you've had in the period since. I would love that. And by extension, hopefully we can learn a ton and grasp all of it.
I mean, it's boring, but it's heartfelt. Learn to live in the moment. Be present.
Okay.
That's it. And I'll expand on it. But basically, just start noticing how much your mind is wandering versus is in the moment. That's all. So if I'm here, I'm only thinking about this, or am I thinking about my annual plan? Am I thinking about my next meeting? And I wish I spent more time in the present. And that's it. When whatever I'm doing, I just want to be present. That's one. And two is do things that allow you to get to know yourself better. And I think the entrepreneurial journey does. So do things that make you go within, and whether that's Vipassana, whether that's silence, whether that's that 20 minutes to yourself. And I know these are very esoteric things, but they lead to something beautiful. And literally, I think if someone could give me a gift that allowed me to live more in the moment or to let me get to know myself better, I would welcome it.
I love that. That is actually, I think, deeper than a 1 minute answer.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of food for thought for anybody who listens. But thank you.
Okay, if you want the 1 minute answer, which is as important and tactical, is
No, I love the fact that it's deep.
down. No, I know, but I think for young
For the
entrepreneurs,
audience,
something even more practical. Today at the end of the show, make a list of 5 people who you may know or may know one away, and say, how will I actively learn from these 5 people? Okay, because I just think, and reach out to them, and don't be afraid if they say no. But I have been a beneficiary of so many people mentoring me without knowing it. And I would just say, one of my friends who's a big party boy said that, and I loved it. He said, I've eliminated negative people from my life, and I've eliminated boring people from my life.
Okay? I love that.
And so the point I'm making is, be very meticulous about who you choose to spend your time with, your sangat.
Yes.
That sangat will change who you are.
Yeah.
So just relook at where are you spending your time, who you're spending your time with, and figure it out. Whether mentors, whether just inspiring people, back to this freedom, also how you spend your time is critical.
I love that. That is also very, very important. I think on the podcast, the biggest thing that I have learned is meet great people who have immensely been insanely supportive to me, and I learn constantly from them. So strongly resonate. I want to end here, but just curiously, hypothetically, would you have started earlier knowing what you know now?
No.
No?
No, you get a calling. You get a calling on when you're ready for it.
Okay.
So things come in, I just think the universe conspires when you put out an intent, right? And I I've been fired from one of my jobs, so I had to go through that trial to get to where I am. I've been rejected by Harvard, and I reapplied and I got in. So all those were very needed. To start this journey, I had to meet someone like Simran to find someone who could be my partner in developing this. So absolutely not. I would not. Now I'll start
Change
singing.
timelines.
If I had a voice, I'd start singing Frank Sinatra my way.
Fair.
Regrets, I have a few, whatever. But no, it's not that.
Got it.
I think I think there's a time and place,
For everything,
and contrary to, I feel like a young entrepreneur today.
Yeah. No, I think there's a fact also that it's not young entrepreneurs. I think 33 plus folks actually make for great entrepreneurs. It's not the dropouts are glorified, but no,
Yeah.
thanks for that answer. I think laws of physics say we must not change timelines, and
That's right.
I like that. But this has been so much fun. We've
Great.
discussed a bunch, and I have gotten the opportunity to learn from you. And I'm sure that considering the scope of things that we've learned, the kind of brand that you've built, there's a lot of curiosity in so many people. Like I got so many DMs. I put out a story last night on Instagram that, hey, what do you like about Nicobar? Why do you buy Nicobar?
Really?
And it was not like I was hosting you. That was only
Yeah.
today morning. But I got so many DMs, and almost every, and I'm not overstating, was that, hey, we love this brand. It stands for something so unique. The products are so good. And I was so happy to look at that. So I'm sure a lot of curious consumers of the product are going to get so happy knowing the ideology behind it. And hopefully a lot of entrepreneurs watching will learn and take back amazing lessons and build the Nicobars that we further need more and more. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, all, for your time.
And Jivraj, I love being here. Thank you for being patient. We scheduled this. I wanted some time to think about things. You deserve to do something offline. I think you need to have whether half a day to get started, whether 2 hours to get started. Please host a panel offline and get some of your people to come. Just try it.
Surely.
I just think there'll be a different energy
I'm
and it'll be magical.
I will try to do that. Thank you so much, all, for being so kind. This means such a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. If you made it this far, you've probably watched the entire episode. And if you've done that, I'm really grateful. I and my team try to put in a lot of effort to ensure that we can bring the best quality content to you. So if you liked the episode, if you watched it thus far, my request to you is to share it with people, to subscribe to the channel, and to ensure that we can keep growing. We are everything and anything only because of you, our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll keep bringing to you amazing content. Cheers.